This is the What's Next podcast, Houston's #1 platform where I invite creatives to share their journeys and give us a depiction of their visions. Most importantly, the last question I'll ask is, what's next? Yeah. You already know what time it is, man. Episode 102. You know I couldn't miss. MLK weekend, let's go. Yeah. Walk with me.
Yo, it feel like 95. Sachi on my body. Biggie, jigger, puffy, all that
Ballin' is a hobby and I'm wildin' in my wallies. Houston, Texas. Houston, Texas. Tejas, mi Tejas. Welcome back to episode 102, the 102nd edition of the What's Next podcast, a production of Still Visionary Inc. This is a creative story. I'm coming to you January 18th, 2021, MLK weekend, live from my home. Yeah, man, I couldn't let the day go by without podcasting every Tuesday. Habakkuk 2:2-3 says, "And the Lord answered me and said, Write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. You do what you do for yourself to prove you can do it for others. Even though the year of perfect vision needed corrective lenses, your vision was never out of focus. You remained still. You remained determined." Kobe said, "The Mamba mentality is the attention to detail and the level of commitment. Run your race because you got time. Keep the momentum. Believe in your story, a creative story. Remember, never stay comfortable while trusting the process. Be innovative in your 720 hours. There will be stumbling blocks. You just keep pushing. Most importantly, what's next? Continue to drop."
Every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday?
Every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday. Every Tuesday, I come to you in the form of a podcast whether visual or audio or both, at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Before we get started with the episode, I want to introduce my social media handles so I don't disturb the flow of the conversation if and when I get to that point. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at John Ross Dykin, still_visionary. The newly acquired tag is the What's Next Pod on IG. And I'm currently looking for a photographer to take some icy pictures so I can begin posting on that platform. If you would, connect with me on LinkedIn, subscribe to my YouTube channel, like my fan page on Facebook, and visit my website at stillvisionary.com. I took some time this weekend and updated the merch tab. I'm updating the About Us tab as well. I'm putting my new reel on there, and I put some of my new merchandise that I have been rocking over the winter season on the merch tab, and you can shop stillvisionary.com/merch. Again, this podcast drops every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So have no fear. I am coming to drop in your ears and in front of your eyes the next edition. Listen, it's MLK weekend. It's only me today. I wanted to show you my reel this episode, so I'm going to get into that in a few. And I wanted to talk to you about a script that I actually brought up in episode 72 playback. I spent the weekend listening to previous episodes, the episodes that I did by myself, and I briefly spoke about the script that I wrote a few years ago. I briefly spoke about it, but I want to go in depth this go round. And yeah, so I want to first and foremost start off by saying that this is the 102nd edition of the podcast. And 2 years ago, I dropped episode 1. I found myself dropping episode 1 2 years ago in the midst of the Founders Day for a few, if not several, Divine Nine organizations. And I didn't get a chance in the podcast to highlight them. They play such a pivotal role in African American history and American history. So I wanted to take some time this episode to shout out all of my friends that are members of those various organizations, the Noobs, the Sigmas. My wife is an AKA. I got sisters that are Deltas and coworkers that are Zetas. So I want to say to you all, happy Founders Day to the respective organizations that I did not highlight. Also wanted to say a special happy Founders Day to my lodge, Kings Israel number 19. As many of you know, I wouldn't be here today without that alley, that assist that my lodge gave me. And this year we celebrated 14 years of existence. We were established by Andre J. Jones, Dandrew Bedford, Travis Carter, and a few other brothers at the time that made our lodge 14 years ago. So the first line was Freddie, Chris Hunter, God Bless the Dead, Dr. Mike Fain, Brent Moffitt, and Corey Davis. They were the first members of our lodge that came through in 2007. So since then, Kings of Israel has had a plentiful history, and I'm a part of that history, but I wouldn't be here today without that assist that they gave them. No, that they gave me, rather. I wouldn't be here today without that. So, listen, man, a part of me is a podcaster. A part of me is an educator, right? And a part of me, the majority of me, well, part of me is a husband, right? A father. Rest in peace to my son, John Ross Dyke II. But the part of me that I have not shown on this podcast is that of an actor, right? And so that's what you should take this episode, that I'm coming back. I'm on the way back, and I'm actively trying to find my way back to that craft. The craft. I'm actively trying to get back to the craft, and it takes some time, right? So we have what we call a reel, and the reel represents some of the best work that we've done, right? And I spent last night and the day before gathering all of these items so that I could bring it to you today. And this is what it looks like. I apologize. It's just that sometimes I feel like you don't understand where I'm coming from.
I do. I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I get it.
Do you?
I get it.
I just feel like we'll end up arguing about this again. And then what happens? How do we stay together despite all our differences? Leia.
What are you doing here?
Wiz told me you'd be here. How you doing?
I'm fine. What do you want?
Can we sit for a second? I want to apologize for making you look bad. It's my fault. I should have just taken the critiques. It's just that I've been under an incredible amount of stress lately.
You know what? That's not my problem, Sincere. Was mentioned you hadn't had work, and because I love him, I was quick to refer you. I want you to know I don't do that often.
And I appreciate that, Leia. Sincerely, I do. I don't want to make excuses. It's just that I felt like he was already against me. I felt like my back was up against the wall.
My name is Donovan Wells, and I'm an A&R at Cold Stone Records.
How you doing? I'm Jax. It's Legacy. What's wrong?
I heard your music, and it blew me away. Totally different from what's out now. Your stage presence, your performance level were on point. We're putting together a very exclusive showcase and legacy. We want to include you. The artists that are performing were carefully selected and handpicked. Each artist will perform 3 songs. You're judged based on content, originality, and performance. The winner of the showcase will be awarded a record deal from Cold Stone Records.
Things affect people in different ways. Instead of trying to be understood, try understanding the other person's POV. Felicia, a situation for you may be different for him, and sometimes, Solomon, you may feel a certain way and vice versa. This doesn't mean that anyone is wrong or anyone's going to ridicule the other. It's simply different POVs. I think it's important that you two consider each other's perspectives and feelings before you speak. That can prevent arguments. Drew, no matter how hard I try, I cannot forget you.
Watching Jaden Keith today makes me realize that anything's possible. Love isn't perfect, but it can conquer all things. I didn't want to leave here today without letting you know what's in my heart. And what's in my heart is you, Drew. I have a passion for you. You're my passion. And you once said that you should always have a passion for something you claim to love. Well, I love you. I'm in love with you.
Love? How could you possibly love me? What do you know about love? What is love to you, Malik?
Love is everything. It's everything you needed to be. You're what I need and more, and I believe that with everything in me.
And how do I know you won't cheat on me again?
Drew, you said that a man that can't explain his actions is doomed to make the same mistakes.
Round of applause. Yes. Yes. Listen, this is a creative story, right? And so the creative that you should be familiar with is me. This is a creative story, so you should get familiar with me. And so right there is my actor's reel. That's on my website, stillvisionary.com, and that is what I give out when it's time to audition. Right. But in the reel, I put 5 scenes there, and a reel, you're really supposed to put various projects, but because I've come up in the acting game on my own, 2 of those scenes were from my homegirl, Jayla Jenkins. She's been on the podcast a few times. She wrote 2 of those films, and the other scenes I produced and wrote myself. Right. So, the first scene in my reel is with my dear friend, Takara Taylor. And, I want to I spoke about her in Tease for Us, that episode last year that I did with Asia. We were talking about tease, and, I've always told, my wife knows this, and everybody who is familiar with my acting career knows this, but Takara Taylor is my dear friend who recently buried her husband, right? And speaking on somebody who's buried somebody that they love, it's a burning sensation that you get when you get that longing to be next to them, to see what they would be doing at the very moment that you're in. And so Melly has always been one of my biggest supporters, right? She did Grussel Diaries for years for free. She did Chameleon Sunrise. She did the Who Cares podcast. Everything that I have, if you follow my journey and you know where I come from in this entertainment and this acting and podcasting lane, you know that Takara Taylor has been a staple in my brand, right? And so I updated my reel, but I felt that scene in my reel was one of the better scenes that I wrote in Grussel Diaries, because we both were going through a moment in time. And, Melly, there are no words to describe what you are going through right now. I've been there. Mine at a different level than yours is. But I'm eternally grateful for the support that you've given me in my journey to becoming an actor or acting. I'm eternally grateful for that. I think that it goes without being said that, you're my peoples. And so I just, I can't put a reel together without having a scene with Takara in it. That just is, it just is fact, because I've done all my acting across from her. And yeah. So the second scene was with Sam Walker. She did Grosso Diaries a couple of years ago. She did Grosso Diaries, and I wanted to get a little variety in my reel. So I decided to go with that scene. The third scene in there is my one and only speaking scene in Pipe Dreams. And so I bugged Jayla. I was like, hey, can I get that scene? Because I needed that, the look of it. It was a dark film, and I played a role that I had done in real life before. I was once upon a time a music manager back in the day. And so I wanted to get that scene in there. The fourth scene in there was a scene that I did that my man Mario Wanza and I wrote. We wrote a short film entitled Chameleon Sunrise years ago that was basically highlighting the insecurities and the constant, what do I want to say? Sometimes when people have problems in relationships, they shield them and make it seem like it's something else rather than the point at hand. And we wrote a short film about that when we put that in the film festival. And I wanted to put that scene in there. That was a really good project that we did. Now you can stream that project on YouTube under the VMLLC 2012 page on YouTube. And the last scene was my very first lead role, Love Is. That was a scene that I'd come a long way in that project. If you've been rocking with me, you know that I had the little rat titties. I had the rat titties in my hair back in the day, and I cut my hair because I was ready to change. And that scene just, I talked to Ruby Lee about that scene when we did Burn the Ships in LA in 2019. I talked to her about that scene, and that was one of the better scenes of the film for me, where I felt like I had elevated my acting career. So as an actor, we put a reel together, and that's how we kind of market ourselves to the producers and directors that have projects going on that we audition for. And so in 2021, I said, when I get done with this real estate program, I want to kind of go all in at it, right? So I had to update that. And that's what it is, man. Round of applause again for me. Right. And that reel is available on my website, stillvisionary.com/about-us, right under my homegirl Narika's interview with me. She brought me on her platform, and we talked about Still Visionary Inc. and my plans and aspirations for my production company, right? So as an actor, if I could define myself in one word, I would say that it's undiscovered, right? But I really haven't put myself in the right lane to be able to secure more roles, and so this podcast, this platform that I created, is going to be a place that I bring those projects to you, give you snippets, and provide you with a link to, support the dream. This is how I'm trying to feed my family. So, I want to do that. I want to use this platform here to leverage my career, be successful at it, and leverage my career like you see so many of these other entertainers doing. Everybody's an actor nowadays because they might have success in something else. That producer, to bring $1 in, they go and grab that person. Hey, come on over here. Even if they might not be of the ilk of acting, everybody's an actor. So, from a local level, I got to use that same blueprint. Get successful at one thing and, leverage that into something else. But I had my editor on here a few times in the past few years, Tempest Green. She helps me kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? She helps me kind of, put together my thoughts, right? Oh, you know what? Oh man, God. Before I do that, it being MLK Day weekend, I want to highlight the fact of MLK and say that MLK was a leader that I looked to be, a leader that stood by his principles, a leader that made sure that he put the well-being of people before him, made sure that he represented a cause. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to make sure that I spoke on that, because if I'm gonna say that the Pan 9 is a part of African American and American history, then MLK is world history. And I used to kind of downplay the holiday by saying, when everybody would post MLK, I would post Malcolm X being, some silly boy stuff. But MLK today, it being his birthday weekend, or his birthday and his weekend and his day, I wanted to highlight and talk about my project, because it coincides, and this is why. I was talking to my man, and my man told me, I was telling my man, listen, people marched on Capitol Hill, got into the White House, and did all kind of foolishness in there, right? And you've heard the narrative. If it was a black man, what do you think would happen? Well, I know what would happen. So I don't really prescribe to what people were saying, because I know what would happen. That's why me as a black man, I wouldn't be doing that. You know what I'm saying? But I'm so glad that it wasn't us, because it would have been an outcome that would have led us back down that George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, rest in peace to all of them. That journey, that road, right? But a couple of years ago, I was in between jobs, and I talked about this in episode 72. I was in between jobs, and when I say creativity comes from experiences, that's exactly what I mean. I was working a job that, any job that I've ever had, I start off energetic about it. I love it. I'm there. I'm all in. And then it starts to dwindle. I start to get agitated, bored, resentful that I'm not in a different place. And so I used that experience and just got in my bag. I started writing. And at the time, Alton Sterling had been strangled to death by the police in Baton Rouge. Eric Gardner, police brutality. Sandra Bland, police brutality. And it goes back to that whole saying, if it were black people that marched on Capitol Hill and forced their way into the White House, not even forced their way, maybe even forced their way, but were let in, however you want to look at it. If it were black people that had done that, would the outcome have been different? Of course it would have been. We all know that. We all know that the outcome would have been different. But I started thinking to myself, we're always portrayed in that lane. We're always portrayed in that lane. See, people never want to ask you, well, how did you get to that point? They see you at the point that you're at, and then they just have this negative viewpoint because it happened to be that you are doing something that they wouldn't do, right? So, and the prime example I have for this is how media, and they do their job, how media had covered the Mike Brown thing, right? And it was that incident that kind of stuck with me, and I was just like, listen, Well, what was he before? Because if left up to media would be the one that would have said, oh, Mike Brown was this, Mike Brown was this. But in the end, Mike Brown was a kid. And we should expect kids to make mistakes, even if they are mistakes of that caliber. If he learns from it, as an educator, I've learned that. Kids are going to make mistakes. That's something I was talking to Andrew about, right? Andrew was one of the kids that initially when I gave a directive in class, he wouldn't do it. And I said, okay. And, I had this whole, all right, well, you don't do it, you're going to fail. And it would be, even if it was the last 6 weeks of the 6 weeks, Andrew would say, hey, Mr. Dyke, could you grade this paper for me? I did the work. And as an educator, you don't want to intentionally fail people. I don't want to fail anybody. But if you just don't do the work, you don't do the work. It's nothing that I can do. If you don't do the work, you don't do the work. But when you do the work, hey, listen, all I wanted you to do was do the work. And now that you've done the work, I will grade it because I don't want to fail you. Right? So I started thinking, well, what was his life before? Everybody, Alton Sterling. People can say, oh, he was boosting CDs and Eric Gardner was selling cigarettes or whatever. But what was their life before that led up to that? Were they homeless? Were they this? What were they? Were they, convicts that had gotten out and got a new life and weren't given fair opportunities, even though they've paid their debt back to society? Were they these type of individuals? And while I was working security that summer, right, I'm down on my, I'm working overnight, which I just hate. So everybody who works overnight, I commend you. I hate working overnight. I'm overnight and I'm just like, man, this is just torture. I can't believe I'm here. Just down, just sulking. Instead of seeing the bright side of it, you got a job. I'm like, man, you know what? Oh my God, I can't stand it. I just hate it. I started to write from the perspective of what it would look like to be a guy who was down on their luck and they were on the way to doing something bad. And so everything that I wrote at the time had to do with African Americans. I'm a black man, so I got to write about us. I got to write about what it would look like for me if I were in that lane. So I started penning and I wrote a maybe 10 to 12 page short film talking about the downward spiral of an African American man entitled Plan B. So I was talking to my man Mario. I was like, listen, man, I don't think, Tempest was like, you might want to move on, scrap it, start over. And I did. And I wrote something else. This is around the time, my son had passed. I went to New York with my wife and I was on the rooftop in Queens and I was just writing, watching the train go by. I was writing. And I came up with another 15-page short film, right? Right? But I said to myself, you know what? It's almost like, hold on. My brother's calling. Yo, T.
Yeah.
T.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
T, man, listen, I'm on the podcast right now. What's going on with you?
Oh, my bad.
No. What's going on?
You see what everybody's doing on MLK Day.
Well, man, I'm at the crib podcast. You want to come by the crib? You can. I'm here.
Okay.
By the time you get here, I'll be done.
All right.
So, yeah, Temples was like, go ahead and just scrap it. And in my mind, I was like, okay, because here's the whole thing. When I used to do Grussel Diaries, when I did Grussel Diaries with Mario, I told Mario this. I was like, man, we didn't let anybody else in. And so I said, my evolution has to involve me saying to myself, listen, you don't know it all. So I found somebody that could help me kind of put my thoughts together and make it more user-friendly, more consumable to the masses, right? But I was thinking to myself, man, it's like Demaria said in episode, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was 56, maybe 19. It was 19, Love Overdose. now streaming on my website or Spotify, SoundCloud, and Apple Podcast. Art that's not heard is never old. And you know, with what happened in 2020, you know, George Floyd, you know, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, rest in peace. You know what I'm saying? All of these African American killings. It's time to dust it off. It's time to, you know, it's time to produce that project. It's time. And so, you know, with my whole 2020 resolution, or 2021 ideal now is, hey, it's time to go and get what you want. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I got a couple more steps. These 30 questions on the state final is just like, oh my God, the 30 questions is just killing me. Right. But I'm so close. And when I get done with it, I can move on. I started watching the Steph Curry masterclass, and I also started watching the Sam Jackson masterclass about acting. So I'm ready. I'm focused. I'm locked in. I'm ready. And, you know, every Tuesday I come to you live at 6 p.m. Not live, but 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm here. StillVisionary.com. What songs are on my mind? Listen, yesterday I was on the way to church, right? And we're talking about the 17th. Yesterday I was on the way to church, and I was like, man, I want to listen to something good before I get to church. So I started listening to Mali music. And I was listening to the Mali Is Project. And I'm going to go with Royalty and Beautiful off that project. Royalty and Beautiful off that project. And of course, you know, MLK, it being your weekend, I want you to know that we are still by your side. You already know what time it is. This is episode 102, The Craft. The Craft. Featuring Still Visionary Inc., the What's Next Pod, and me, John Ross, Dr. First. Let's go!
Boy, you ain't no, I say sign for 15. He couldn't afford a lawyer. You know it been a long night when I hear Tom Joyner right off in the state.
When I heard that, I was like, yeah.
Corners came up in this wicked place, taught me never be a loner. Niggas running off with your bread, and they'll leave you real hungry. And if you in debt, they creep up and put that steam on you. It's a lot of ways out, but we could only choose two. It's that ball of that street, my nigga, what you finna do? Senior year came up, cap and gown, Nike shoes. I like making decisions and moving
when I wanna move.
From that point on in my life, I just knew to stay true. At the end of the day, only thing matter is revenue.
MLK weekend.
Cops race down the avenue. Sun beaming, got it hot, feel like you walking in some glue. This the truth. Different rules to the shit I had to do. This the truth. Different rules to the shit I had to do.
MLK, we by your side.
On my side.
We by your side, MLK.
Boy, you ain't on my side.
Rest in peace to the king.
Yeah, boy, you ain't on my side. I say, boy, you ain't on my side. I was born in Houston, Texas on a Tuesday.
Facts.
Going up and I got all the hoes choosing. Niggas acting stiff, but you know that I'm bruising, cruising. Never have I ever thought about losing.
When money come up, I get to talking real fluent.
Envisioned all this shit.
Now watch me go and do it.
Interior all red, mouth open, looking foolish. Hold on to my pride, cause the world is real ruthless.
D-drop.
We'll respect anything lesser gets you toothless. Tuesdays, $5 box, we had to chew this. Telling you the real because we really went through this. Don't look at me stupid when you see me get into it.
Listen, man, today is January the 18th, 2021, which means that we have, if my math is correct, 347 days left in the 2021 year. There's a lot of days left, man, and for me, man, obviously in 400 and I'm sorry, Jesus Christ, 347 days, man. I don't know. I'm not going to force it. I don't know. I don't know what I want to accomplish. Well, listen, my wife's birthday is coming up. Got to do something big for her. Huge, right? And so I want to, I'm hoping that this next time that I take the state final for my real estate program, it's done. I'm hoping it's done, right? And it will be done. It will be done, right? So in 400, why do I keep saying 400, y'all? In 347 days, right? 347 days, I hope to have locked in that real estate license. Be the end of a great chapter, a great book, right? And the beginning of a new one. Listen, man, it's MLK weekend. And, I drop every Tuesday. I keep saying that. Oh, by the way, the Every Tuesday t-shirt will be on the website at the end of this week. So you can check it out. It'll be on the website at the end of this week. And also, while you check out the Every Tuesday t-shirt, go ahead and go over to that merch tab and look at what I've got. I've got polos on there. Okay, this is a polo. I wanted to just do something different with the merch, right? I got windbreakers. I got bomber jackets. I got hoodies, t-shirts, and I've got t-shirts and hoodies on there that have nothing on there, so you could customize your own, right? And so my Cash App, even though I'm kind of pissed off with them, but it's my fault. It's John Ross Dyke. So Cash App me, man. Let's get this merch game going. Listen, man. Have I covered everything that I want to cover? Yeah, man. I don't have much. It's MLK Day weekend, and I wanted to come to you dolo during the daytime, something a little different than normal, and just kick it with you for a second, show you my reel, reintroduce my script Plan B, and yeah, man. So most importantly, the last question I'll ask is, what's next? For me, man, it's I don't know. This episode, I don't know. What's next will be finishing off the program and getting into this master class a little more in depth, right? Steph Curry's and Sam Jackson's, and maybe another one. Yeah. Houston, Texas, man. This is a creative story. Thank you for tuning in. My name is John Ross Dyke the First, the father of John Ross Dyke the Second. Rest in peace to my king, my baby. I love you. Houston, I do what I do for myself to prove that I could do it for others. Make sure that you visit that merch tab. Make sure you share my podcast with somebody. I love you. Peace and blessings. And I'll see you next week. Let's go.
I feel like 95. Sachi on my body. Get you more wet. Now that's these Bumandi. My crystal ball, I see crystal. I crystal y'all with that. I saw the sign like Ace of Spades. That Ace of Spades get cracked me like cheers to the money guy. The Willie niggas who buy them bottles and then they spill these liquors. Yo, salute my dude. I see you, dog. 5 bottles, 1 dick. Why I need 2 bras? I know I'm out of line, but love is shower time. You know it rose rain when your cloud is 9. Get off that high ass hussy. This a private party. Been on my